Yeah, man, definitely gonna have to change that intro music. It's too theatrical. Yeah, it's been on our list for a while. But everyone, it's Wednesday, right? And you know what that means. It means I get to talk to great people with even greater insights. Let's face it, like every business could do with a bit of a few more leads. In the old sales funnel, pretty much every business has the same problem. The leads turn into sales. Turn into inquiries. Those leads turn into inquiries. And inquiries turn into sales. Those sales generate revenue. That revenue allows you to make better decisions as a business. So today I have on Wang. He's a good friend of mine and also the founder of GrowthLabz, which is based in Sydney. And Will is an absolute machine when it comes to getting customers' attention and most importantly, getting your customers to take an action without it sounding spammy or slimy or anything like that. So Will, tell us more about yourself. Tell us a bit about GrowthLabz and what's your biggest bugbear when it comes to outreach in general?
Yeah, thanks, man. A couple of long-winded answers feeling coming through, I guess. So about me, about GrowthLabz first. We're a direct results marketing agency. So we do a whole bunch of lead generation, both in B2B, B2C. And we've kind of gone down that specialized lead generation path. So we use a whole bunch of stuff like email marketing, Facebook, we do a bunch of LinkedIn and stuff as well. Been around for about 5 years, and the reason why we're at the stage we're at now is because when I first went into business and decided, hey, I've got to jump into business for myself. I'm by nature very introverted, so it was really, really hard for me to get the cut through. Really difficult for me to put myself out on center stage. I needed a way of generating leads though to feed my family, obviously. So that's when I used my copywriting background that I had. I've got a passion for copy. I think first and foremost, I don't even call myself a business owner. I call myself a copywriter first and foremost. So that's how everything kind of started. I use the copy principles that I teach others and I help others with to market our own business. And as we started getting clients come on board, they were like, this ad stuff's cool, but how you actually reached us with your email stuff was even better. Can you do it for us? And so that's kind of how the path and journey has led us to where we are at the moment. So currently working with a bunch of really fast-growing companies, both listed here in ASX and also in New York Stock Exchange. So I get to work with companies of all different sizes, different rates of growth, and just get to work on some pretty cool and exciting stuff at the moment.
Yeah, very good. And yeah, tell us a bit about your background, Will. How did you get into the point where you could, especially with the copywriting, obviously, a bit of context for everyone that's watching, because a few people are jumping on now. A bit of context, Will is very well known in our space for his ability to, especially his copywriting ability. He's very, very well known for it. So yeah, tell us a bit how you actually got to the point where your copywriting got to that stage where you're like, actually, there's a lot of value in what I can show others and do for others.
Yeah, I think it was just a very natural progression. So when I was in high school and in uni, I used to sell websites to people that I met on gaming forums. Used to be a massive gamer, met these people online, and one day some guys ran and says, "Look, my website sucks. I got ripped off by this other mob, and they haven't delivered a website. Does anyone know anyone who can help us with that?" So naturally, being a broke uni student. I thought, hey, maybe I can go from eating ramen to eating KFC for the next week and take on this job, right? So I did that, figured the tech stuff out, and figured out the words to put on the website. And the same business turned around 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and they said, what have you done? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, this thing is phenomenal. They were just saying, like, people just responding to the way that the website's been put together. Is it the graphics? Is it what you've said on it? Like, why are people actually taking action for the website? So then I went back and I was like, well, what is it exactly? Because I had no idea. I couldn't figure it out. I've been a fiction reader my entire life, and I used some of the writing principles that I learned reading all these writers and put it onto the website and build them stories. And that ultimately was what kind of got the results. And so I said, look, this is pretty fascinating. The fact that I can think up words, put them onto a web page, and these businesses get better results as from that was kind of really fascinating to me. And so that got me going down into the whole copy, like what is actually copy? How do I write stuff? Why do I put words a certain way? And it led to me kind of taking contracts on things like, platforms like Upwork, Freelancer, and really honing my knowledge and skills in terms of copy. And then from the back of that, there were other businesses like my father-in-law's business, where he just let me experiment and write a whole bunch of copy for websites, ads, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the very beginning. And since then, I kind of fallen in love with the puzzle piece of like, how do we create great copy?
Excellent. And now, guys, like last week, and the week before with Harry and Dan, everyone, jump on. If you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. They'll either show up in the stream here, or Michelle's watching Instagram. So if you're watching on the live and Instagram, make sure you ask a lot of questions. Will's here. We'll just add the questions in and answer them as they come in. But we'll continue on with the path we're on. So getting back, biggest bugbear. So what is a bugbear with the industry in general, or just the way copywriting is treated or marketing outreach is done at the moment? What's your bugbear, man?
Dude, I think it's always been the same. It's just laziness, pure laziness when it comes to approaching people, not thinking about the market, not thinking about the message, going after a quick buck and not putting the hard work in. That's always been a bugbear. I mean, that's what leads to spammy messages and just absolute crap. So bugbear today, bugbear, when I first started, and I think it's going to be a bugbear for me for a long while yet.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, let's now see Michelle's scribbling a message down here. So we'll just get this technical. So the video hasn't approved on Insta. It's just on the live, but can we hear? Should we stop the Insta live? Nah, look, it's fine. Yeah, they'd still be able to hear him though. Yeah, but they can only see you, so there's no half screen. Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. All right. So, Will, there's obviously a lot of business owners will watch this in the course of the next week or two. So obviously a lot of people don't actually know what direct outreach is. So let's sort of like dive into what direct outreach actually is and why business should really care about it.
Sure. So I'll take the best example. The best way to illustrate this is to give you an example of bad direct outreach. These are the emails that you're probably getting constantly. Hey, can I sell you some SEO services? Can I sell you some, Facebook marketing services? All that kind of stuff. That's websites, exactly, right? Like that. Can I sell you backlinks? That is bad outreach. Outreach, all it means is that knowing who you want to target for your product or service and just reaching out to them with a kind of an offer, right? Whatever that offer is, a phone call or an audit, whatever it is, it's the fact that we're outreaching to them rather than them coming inbound to us. That's all it is. So it's just about reaching out to our target demographic with what we do and how we do it and getting some kind of response.
Yep. Now, why should a business care about that? Like obviously businesses spin a lot of plates and they're constantly barraged by companies, ironically through outreach for ads and SEO and websites. So why should a business actually take notice of something like outreach?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it really depends on the types of businesses and who they are, what they're trying to sell, and who their target audience is. So, for example, we work with a lot of really fast-growing and funded companies, and also some bigger companies who are listed on stock exchanges. For me to run a Facebook ad to try and get in front of the right people at those companies, it's almost impossible. Like if the targeting, there's no way that we can target on Facebook, hey, get me in front of these people. Whereas if I can use outreach, I know who they are, I can figure out what the email address is likely to be, and if I can craft a really, really well thought out, planned, and put together email, I'm more likely to actually get them to respond and have a conversation with them. So outreach is all about, it's not the right medium for everyone. Certainly for B2C, we don't use it at all. But for the right companies, when the right people in those companies, it could be one of the best ways of actually getting leads through and getting new clients on board. So
give us an example of that, because obviously, if we go back to basics, like one thing for context, Will and I have been working together closely about improving our messaging and just the way we interact with cold interactions with people. And, that was one of the things I really took away from it. It's like there's a lot of industries you would think that wouldn't benefit from direct outreach for targeting a specific audience that actually works quite well. And, so maybe give us an example or a more obscure use case for direct outreach.
Oh man, we've done so many different niches, industries. Some of them are pretty weird. It's one of those things where if you're creative enough, there's always a use for it. Some of the clients we've worked with in the past who are more of like a B2C play, for example, we had a client within they sell sanitizers, and that wouldn't normally be, a very effective way of outreaching because it's more of a B2C play. What we did for them was we did a B2B outreach campaign looking at potential referral partners or wholesalers and retailers. And that was really successful. So it's more of those things like if you can't reach out to the clients directly or the end user directly, there's a possibility that you can always go and find business partners or affiliates or referral partners and people who can work with you to grow both your businesses. So there's not many industries, I think, where outreach would just completely not work. Well, actually, I should caveat that by saying there are a couple of industries where it's harder to do outreach for. For example, construction's a pretty hard industry to get opens and replies. That one is a little bit tricky sometimes. And, other industries where people aren't in front of their computers as much.
Yes, because I suppose it's like any marketing in it. They've got to be in front of the medium you're trying to present. And when a construction manager's only looking at their emails 2 minutes a day, it's hard to when they're getting 150 emails in big batches, it's hard to sort of where do you sit in that. No, I understand that. So something I like to ask everyone that comes on is what is obviously in the industry that we play in, there's big retainers, there's a lot of work involved. What does the day-to-day look like for yourself at GrowthLabz, when it comes to this kind of thing? What does a day in the life of Will Wang look like?
Yeah, it's different depending on, obviously what day, what week. We've got things pretty structured at the moment where Monday and Tuesday are my focus work times where I don't take any meetings at all. It's time for me to really be reflective and have thinking time around the emails that we write. Copywriting and certainly writing emails and outreach emails, it's an exercise in thinking, not an exercise in writing. So to do that effectively for ourselves and for our clients, I've got to really have focused time blocks where I can sit down and get the work done. So Monday to Tuesdays, normally I block out and I just focus on projects and get things smashed out. Wednesdays to Thursdays, I typically use as phone time. So whether I'm talking to clients or whether I'm talking to new leads coming through or people looking at us as a service provider, Wednesdays to Thursdays are really good times to talk to people. And then Fridays for me are more times where I can go and learn. So if I'm upskilling, if I'm looking at other copy, if I'm reflecting on our own business, for example, I'll do that on a Friday. And typically I won't take any phone calls on a Friday as well. So yeah, in terms of the logistics, that's how I structure my week. And then within that, obviously the focus work zones, depending on the tasks I'm doing, there's different ways that I approach those tasks as well.
And that sounds like a very, very polished process. That has that evolved over time?
Yeah, dude, it's completely evolved, especially as I've got team members coming on board. So my general manager is so good at keeping me on track, whereas without her, I'll be all at the shop. So she helps us, get the client stuff scheduled in at the right time and do all of that. When I first started, it was absolutely manic, 18-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week. And that's a process you've got to go through when anyone's starting a business. I don't know a single founder or business owner that hasn't gone through that hustle. When you're first starting out, you're going to have to do more. Like you just really are. But it's just all part of it. Nowadays, because the team is bigger, because our clients are a little bit more established, they've been around for a little bit longer, it gives me a little bit more breathing space to do the kind of thinking pieces that get them even better results. But it's not always like this. There are manic weeks and weeks where I'm just like, doing crazy hours. But thankfully that's pretty, few and far between at the moment.
Yeah. That's, it's even now, like we're shifting offices, like we're halfway through we move into the new office on the 5th of June. And I'm out there at 6 in the morning laying carpet down because I'm like, it's like if I'm not going to do it, no one, and I'm stingy. So I was like, okay, well, actually, I'll go and lay that, and I find it quite therapeutic. But it's funny because there's days where I'm like, actually, it's pretty steady, like I could get used to this, and then there's days where it's like weeks where it's like, actually, I'm like doing too much now. It's 12-hour, 15-hour days every day, and it's like, oh, actually. You can't sustain. I think that's the biggest thing I've gotten from speaking to doing a lot of these interviews now is you can only sustain those big like 15, 16-hour days for a very, very short period of time. If that becomes the status quo, that's when real bad things start to happen to yourself and your business. That's the general cliffs I've gotten from everyone I've asked about day to day. Because it's not ideal. Nervous breakdowns and stuff. That's what that stress is what causes that. Now, let's obviously, like I said, there's going to be a lot of business owners that are going to be like, okay, well, I wouldn't even know a starting point. Where can I explore a little bit more about this? What are some of the some of the things? Let's really focus on the smaller side of town here, and like let's say, for instance, a little engineering firm, for instance, and they've got a client base and stuff. What are some things that a small business can do themselves? Obviously, before they would see someone like yourself, establishing and just things they can do themselves. What are some of those things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always like working with clients who have tried things themselves as well. So don't think that just because I say that we work with larger companies, it's a lot of it's the mentality behind the companies as well. Like
Yes.
one of the filters we have is that the companies we work with have to have tried marketing stuff on themselves. If we become the one dependent source of leads for a company, it's not a good situation for us. It's not a good situation for our clients. I always say try it yourself. If you think there's potential, then bring someone else in to scale it. So if I was, it's a good question because I'll use myself as an example. Like we eat our own dog food, but not all the time. We get into phases where we're just too busy or we've got too many leads, too many projects going on, and we can't take on more work. So our lead generation isn't always consistent as well. But when we need to go back to market and get more leads, our process generally looks like looking at a case study or looking at information that we can provide or value we can provide to the market. It really starts with the value piece first. And too many people start with the sales, like how can I go get more leads? How can I get more sales conversations? I start with, what if we've done this really cool for our clients that other people or other businesses just like them would really want to find out about? Because that in essence is the offer, right? Like you can have a really bad offer and you can have amazing marketing, but it's only going to get you so far. And it's only going to get you so far for a very short period of time. But if you have an amazing offer or value piece, it's so easy just to approach anyone in the market and go, hey, we've just done this with a client of ours. Do you want to see what this looks like, what it might look like for you? And you're going to get so many more bites, even if the email sequence isn't perfect, even if you haven't got all the text set up and all that kind of stuff. Like having the right offer out there and having the right value piece is so important. So I encourage everyone to take the time to think about the value you put out into the world. Think about what you can say that will get people's attention, especially of your ideal buyers, and work on that part first. So, when we were going through the exercise, of looking at leads for yourself, Jimmy, one of the things that we did was tell me about your best clients, like your best results. And that drove a lot of everything else that we were doing and got us some pretty cool results. So that is always the first, go-to point from that. Aside from that, it's literally just, you've got this really amazing piece of value. You've got this really great offer. It's literally going, well, who would want to see it? And how do I get this in front of them? And you can send them an email from your work email at the moment. When you start scaling up this kind of stuff, you want your own email servers and that kind of, all the tech jazz behind it. But by that point, you should be able to employ someone to do that for you, whether it's locally or whether it's someone who's outsourced. But for the beginning, just literally focus on who are the 5 or 10 people every single day I can send an email to that might have an interest in what I have to say.
Exactly, and that's the key to not being spammy, isn't it? That's the biggest takeaway I got from work. It's like you can do. I mean, it's gotta for better or worse. Everyone just assumes that outreach is sending hundreds of people the same email and just hoping one of them replies, because that's what that's the status quo, right? But targeted outreach, providing value to people that actually could use it, like use the value, use the whatever it is, the case study or whatever that is, sending it to them with a bit of thought about what you're actually trying to achieve it's technically outreach, but it's really just being a good corporate citizen and just being involved in the community. That's the big thing, is like you don't have to fire off thousands of emails. And look, there's horror stories of that kind of stuff, what it does to businesses anyway. But you can just get away. You can just email, your network and just provide some value. That's what we sort of started doing, and it worked well.
Yeah, I think a good marker of that is some of the clients that we're working with now, we are sending a high volume of emails, but the response that we're getting back from the people who aren't interested, I mean, we get emails saying like, look, this isn't really a service for us. We've got, we're not looking for your service or product at the moment, but I just wanted to reply and say you've got some awesome emails. I've loved reading it. Thank you anyway. Like when you get responses like that, you know that you've got a pretty good email sequence. We're not going to get through to 100% of the market. In fact, marketing, if you read 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall, the whole goal of what we're trying to do is to disqualify people who have zero interest in what we have to say. Like, for example, for my own lead generation stuff, if I send out an email to people, I'm asking them, hey, are leads or is marketing your topmost problem at the moment? Because companies out there, they've got enough leads, they've got more leads than they can handle. It's the conversion piece or the customer service piece, which is really top of mind for them. So there's no point in me hammering them with 50 emails about leads if they're not even thinking about that. So my emails are always more leading with, hey, is this your situation? Is this your case? If it is, I've got a solution for you. If it's not, that's completely fine. Let me know, click on the link, do whatever you want to do, and I won't email you again. It's more that disqualification process. So I'm only talking and spending time with the right people.
Yeah, because I suppose that's the biggest thing, and it's like, there's only so many hours in the day to actually do this stuff, and that spray and pray approach. Like I get emails all the time from people saying, "Oh, you should be doing SEO." It's like if you took like a second to even see who I was, you wouldn't be sending me that email and wasting my time and wasting your own time. Like, it's right. The industry's rife with it. So like that's why it works so well right now, especially is because when you send an actual genuine email to the right person, providing them value, people go, "Oh, wow, that's really good." And Dan Nikas, who came on last week, was saying that he gets like 70-80% open rates on email still to this day. And there's like people with his existing market, but like his ads and his Facebook ads and stuff reach significantly less people and get significantly less engagement. It's because when you get a legitimate email that's actually that you're interested in looking at, most people will open it. Whether they engage with it's a different thing, but most people at least open the email and read it. Can you say that about a Facebook ad? People will see it,
exactly.
but they'll scroll straight past it a lot of times. So let's open up the playbook here for a sec. Will, obviously, you got a lot of, you got a big bag of tricks, and what are some of the tactics and sort of the things that you've been doing at the moment that's been working well for yourself and the clients at GrowthLabz?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the number one thing we started really doing more so now than we were before is really deep personalization. Deep personalization and deeper research. So, for example, we'll actually reference specific blog posts, specific videos we've seen of them online. We'll reference podcast episodes. And we'll really dig deep into who this client actually is or who this lead actually is as a person, as a business owner, rather than just going top level. Hey, here's your name of the company. So we're really it's kind of like the whole analogy of being a sniper versus a shotgun approach. We're not spraying and praying. We're so honed in on who we want to speak to that when we write the message, they've got no choice but to respond because it's just speaking directly to them. So that's what we're seeing to work really well, really understanding the market. I mean, going back to what you were saying about email open rates, our clients get open rates across a sequence of about 80%, and we had a client recently who we sent a campaign out to other ASX listed companies and, directly to CEOs of some of the biggest companies in Australia. The reply rate is 40%. So it's like, if you can get those numbers, you don't have to go large. It's more about researching them, looking at news articles they've been featured in, looking at what they're putting out personally and as part of the company, and referencing all of that in the reply to them.
It's hard. That's what I found, just from my personal experience. We work with a lot of blue collar businesses here, and we discovered this. It's actually easier to outreach to those, like, maybe not from a technical standpoint because you got to get their details and engage with them, but like when you're trying to outreach to a hydraulics company that does no social media, no, they have nothing on the internet. It's like actually quite difficult to talk to them because you got nothing to reference. So it's like, they don't even post about the jobs they've done or anything. They just kind of have a landline and they work off that. So it's, that's the biggest thing. The takeaway from that, I think, is that just, it takes like how long does it, like, let's say for instance, you're deciding, okay, well, we want to engage with this person, because I don't like the word targeting, but we want to engage with this person. how long does it generally take you to do the research to be able to go, I'm going to fire an email off to them now. We've got enough information to talk to them.
Yeah, so typically, okay, so there's two scenarios in this. One is if you have a team that does it for you, which I do, and the second one is if you're doing this yourself. So I'll kind of go into both. Um, if you're doing this yourself, I'd recommend probably about 5 to 10 minutes of research, right, on these people, just to make sure that the right people, they're saying the right things. So in an hour, you should be able to get across to anywhere between, 6 to 10 or 11 people. Which, if you're doing the right job, maybe that's all you need, depending on how many leads you need for your business. That might just be enough, like an hour a day, really targeted, 5 minutes each research. If you have a team, what you can do is you can give them parameters. So then it's not really even about how much can you do within an hour. It's how many do we need for the amount of customers that we need each month, and let's work backwards from that. So there's two types of equations. One is if you're doing it yourself. The second one is if you have team, or you've got leverage, or you've got other ways of getting these people's details, and looking at if they're right for you or not.
Yeah, yeah, 100. That makes so much sense. And let's quickly talk about tapping into because obviously this is leaning towards finding new customers. But as we were sort of talking when you were coaching me about this, is it's actually the best place to start is with your existing network of people and reaching out into that. So talk a little bit about ways you can lean into your own referral network to generate a few inquiries.
Yeah, this was getting kind of a big one. And as we went through the coaching process, this is always one of the first things we do as step one, because there's just so many leads out there, and we kind of found this to be the case as well, where there are leads out there, or I'm going to stop calling them leads because that's a very salesy term. There are people out there we've spoken to who know us, who like us, and who trust us. And it might not have been the right time for them in their business to engage us in the past, but it doesn't mean that it's not the right time now, and they just haven't thought about it yet. So one example is when we actually did the work, and with our other friend James as well, we sent out a version of the 9-word email, which is like, hey, are you still interested in this service, or in help around this result? When we did that, we actually got some really cool replies back, pretty much across the board, from people who had put it off previously, but now is actually a much better time to talk about what you actually do. So my number one thing,
they've sort of forgotten
exactly.
over time, or
yep, life's got in the way, and now they're ready.
Yeah, so guys, just to reiterate, ask us questions. Will's here. Surprised there hasn't been any questions. Generally, it's a pretty it's a lot of unexplored territory, this direct route. And honestly, just from our experience doing it, it makes a huge difference to the business if you do it well. And I think that's a lot of it is a lot of businesses sort of half attempt it. They half bake it. They send out a couple of emails, go, I never got a reply, so I'm just going to focus on the next thing. But like anything in marketing, you've got to kind of see it through to be able to determine whether it's worked or not. So, yeah, I definitely think it's worth asking questions while Will's here if you have them now. So what are some mistakes? Obviously, you work with a big swath of businesses, all different. Okay, well, there you go, Clarence. First question. G'day, Clarence. How you doing? He has asked, do you do LinkedIn outreach?
That's a good question. So yes and no. LinkedIn outreach has gotten a lot less effective, and it's actually really good. So people used to jump on their LinkedIn, send out 50 connection requests, spam the crap out of their network and stuff like that. It's gotten a lot tighter now, in that you can't send more than, like, the guideline is around 20 connection requests a day, but even that's a lot. So typically I'd say LinkedIn outreach still works, and we still do it, but we are very, very targeted. So we actually send more volume in terms of email outreach versus LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we only do about 5 or 10 connections a day, and we nurture those a lot slower. So we post content up to LinkedIn for our clients. We, generate organic conversations and get shares and stuff like that. So it's more of a outreach just to get the connection, and then use content and value to nurture through to the conversation. That's a bit of a different approach to emails, but we still do that in some way.
Okay, let's actually use Clarence as a great example. Clarence is a friend of mine. He's got a marketing agency that specifically, which is their niche is like lawyers and law firms. So like, let's say he wanted to hypothetically go out and do some outreach. What would sort of be a rough ball? Like, how would you approach that sort of? How would you approach something like that, targeting, say, lawyers and law firms and things?
Cool. And I'll go deep into it. We don't touch lawyers. Law is a niche that we don't do any work with, just for personal personal preference. So I'll go deep into this one. So in
And
terms of
just to
lawyers,
qualify, Clarence is a lawyer too, so he's actually a lawyer.
all
So,
right,
but he's
that
also
makes
a
a lot more
marketer.
sense. That makes a lot more sense. So I won't make any lawyer jokes. I've got a whole bunch of lawyer jokes, so I won't make any of them. But in terms of marketing to lawyers, look, I think if you have a really good base as a lawyer, if you have good case studies, that gets you so much of the way there, right? What I would do is I'll put together a case study of a law firm that we did work with and got exceptional results with. I would connect with people on LinkedIn who I think would be the ideal target for you. So decide what's the size of the business, what type of law, like what different areas you're going after, and then I'll connect with 5 business owners a day with a message, something around, hey, I'm from the industry as well. I'm connecting with other people to share information and learn from each other. We'd love to connect with you if that's okay. Or if you can be even more specific, that's great as well. Talk about, a publication they've had recently, talk about a case they've done, whatever it is, be as personalized as possible. But if not, have a really nice message. And then go and push content onto LinkedIn about your case studies. That's the LinkedIn side of things. LinkedIn, it's more organic. It takes a little while to warm up, obviously. In every single LinkedIn post that you put out there, leave it in the comments. Hey, if you want to find out more, throw me a comment, connect to me, let's have a chat. So in terms of the email outreach, I will put that case study together and I will go out to law firms in the area. For example, if you do family law, if most of your clients are family lawyers, I will target family lawyers. I would find a list of people who you think are an ideal fit, and I would use some kind of value offer to go out to them. So whether it's the case study, so Jimmy, one thing that we looked at as well was putting on your own events, whether it's putting on an event for yourself and your industry, that's always a good way to do it as well. And just, having some kind of value to go out to market with and to get people coming back and having conversations. Now, just keep in mind, we're not selling from these emails. Emails are never, I'll never use cold emails to try and get the sale. All I want to do from a cold email is to get an initial 15-minute phone call or a 20-minute phone call. That 20-minute phone call leads to an hour or more. The hour phone call might lead to a paid proposal, for example. And from the paid proposal, I'd go into a monthly retainer or some kind of package. So just be aware that it's a process behind it. The only thing you're trying to achieve is, have I got something that's going to generate enough curiosity to have that first conversation with me?
Fantastic. That's exactly the same. It doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what industry it is. The people that maybe the message changes, but the same principle that you would use to like talk to and reach out to lawyers is the same I use to reach out to hydraulic companies. Will use this to reach out to his market. It's just the wording the actual physical wording you use, but the principle, it's the same principle applied with I suppose the people that sell door to door, knocking on doors. It's all about just the message you give and knowing the audience and talking to that audience. And that makes a difference. Now, we had a question on Instagram. I'll just type it in here so we can put it up. So we had a message on Instagram from Soothing Lights. So I have started my own business recently and would love to know, how did you get yourself out there from a visibility standpoint, I assume. So Will, let's talk a little bit about GrowthLabz, because obviously, businesses are trusting you with a lot of their, a very important part of their business. So how did you get GrowthLabz out there and into the market?
Yeah, so look, there's a grind to this. There's no easy answer to shortcuts, unfortunately. It is a process. When I first started, before I got my first client, I went to every single business networking event I could find. So I used to do my 9 to 5, and almost 4 evenings a week I would be out there networking with people. I would go to Chamber of Commerce events, I would go to BNI events, I would go to every single event I could get my hands on and talk to people that way. So that was the very first thing that I did to get what we did out there, right? That's like me in freelancer mode. When I started picking up some clients from that, I started building case studies and testimonials and putting a little bit of advertising budget behind that, just to get, see if I can get some more attention. I then, started to use those case studies to leverage myself into speaking positions. So I would look at who was running meetups or events around me. And instead of just attending those events, I'd say, hey, I've been attending your event for 3 to 4 months. I've been working with a client to get this result. Would love to speak at your event. Would your audience love to hear something like this? That started getting me onto stages. So as I started to get onto stages, I started to leverage that experience. So I started speaking in, someone's garage, like literally with 3 people in there. And my most recent in-person live kind of speaking gig had about 850 or 900 people in front of it. But it's a process that you have to go through to get comfortable enough on stage to refine the content to get to that point. So that was one of the other things that we did. And from the stages, once people can have confidence that you can speak well, I started leveraging myself going into podcasts. So I started approaching other people to be guests on their podcast. Again, starting very small, people who just started the podcast. And recently I've been featured on a series of my own on friends and a mentors podcast, which he gets millions of downloads. So again, that will the whole leverage play as well. And then most recently I've brought on a mentor, an advisor, and now a business partner that had a really big audience that he had built over the past decade, and I've leveraged and partnered with him to tap into his audience. So it's a process. There's several things behind it. The key is just to start with one and start building and leverage as much as you can.
There's exactly the same thing. But actually, I think growing, I think people shy, especially in this industry. I can only speak to my experience, right? And that's well, notwithstanding the agricultural experience, but like my online guy, this brand did not exist. This brand did not exist 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It didn't exist. I like to think that people reasonably recognize it reasonably well now, because I spend a lot of time going, how can I make sure that what the work I do and the position I want to be in the market is associated with my face and this brand. And so I just tried to connect the dots, and any place that I could connect those 3 things together as a confluence is where I aim for. So, these live streams, videos, just anything that can put my face, because I like to think I'm reasonably optimistic and I smile a lot, and people like that. So like, I think you play to your strengths. Like maybe if you're not super comfortable in front of a camera, well, don't play to your strength. Maybe, if you really enjoy writing, go and find places you can write content for, and get, try and get syndicated in publications to become the authority in the space. I think that's the secret. Is like Will's established himself as the authority when it comes to, especially copywriting and just direct outreach. He's established himself as the authority. So, and that just comes with people associating Will Wang, GrowthLabz with copywriting, and that just comes from talking a lot about it. And I think most businesses would have the same principle. Not everyone's as comfortable in front of a camera as Will or myself, but that shouldn't stop you from at least going out there and shaking hands.
Yeah, the thing is that, right, when I first started, I was so introverted. Like, this would be my worst nightmare. The other side of like picking what you're good at is just bite the bullet and just knowing that you're going to suck for like a year or two. And just saying, look, I know this is going to suck. I know I'm not great at this, but I can't get any worse than I am now. So let's just go for it. Let's just do it. Like now, one of the most fun things in business for me is actually speaking on stage. But when I first started, like, you can betcha, like the first presentation I did in some random dude's garage, like I had sweat patches running down my sides, and I was stuttering and all this kind of stuff. And it just takes practice. It just takes enough goes that this stuff isn't going to kill you. It's if anything, change your mindset around this, and this becomes really fun. Like, this is seriously one of the best parts of my business right now. Like, getting to speak to people like you, Jimmy, getting to go up on stage and meet people at events. Like, as much of an introvert as I am, like, this is really cool now, because it's such a powerful thing for my business, and I've become so in tune with it that I really like this part now. So just because you suck at it for now doesn't mean you should ignore it, but just like go for it, get better, challenge yourself, just do it, and good things happen.
And it's amazing how many concessions people will make, stuttering on stage. If you're providing value, a lot of people will tolerate a lot of stuttering and a lot of like sweat patches if you're providing value. So like, if you're in business, you should be providing value regardless, and just amplify that value using speaking and writing content or whatever that medium you're comfortable with initially. Just extend that reach. Now, James Norquay over in Sydney has said, would you use cold outreach to get featured on business podcasts?
My dude James, what's up?
The big dog.
The big dog, big dog James. But yeah, so absolutely. There's actually we're looking at a strategy or developing a strategy around this. We get a bunch of our what we do for clients is one, our main focus is and always will be direct outreach and getting leads directly. One of the other things that we're doing on the side is brand building for them though. So it does include getting onto YouTube collaborations, getting onto podcasts. One of the key things I find with podcasts and outreach to get onto podcasts is sometimes if you can't get to the podcast host directly, find other people who have been on the podcast who might be smaller, get into them first, and then you can go back again and say, hey, I've actually been on 2 or 3 of these people's shows who have been on your show. Maybe now's a better time to talk. So cold outreach definitely works. There's actually people out there who just do it as a full-time gig, getting people booked onto podcasts. But you don't have to complicate the process. You don't need to hire an agency just to do this. Like, you can really do it yourself as long as you've been on other podcasts, as long as you can communicate well, as long as you back yourself. It's actually really, really easy. Like, podcast creators are constantly looking for content. They're constantly looking for better guests, new ideas, new content to bring onto the show. So it's actually doing them a favor, doing you a favor. It's a win-win. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, that's the long and short of it, isn't it? It's it's a bit like we were working with a 4Drive company, and I was telling them, actually your best bet, obviously notwithstanding ads and traditional stuff, is like, why don't we just go to some smaller YouTube channels, like 3 or 4, 500 subscribers, and just that are just happy to have someone interested in supporting them, and then work towards the bigger, because they wanted to really work the big end of town, hot 4Drive action and stuff. I was like, dude, you're gonna pay tens of thousands of dollars to place a product there when you can go to 50, 500 subscriber 4Drive channels on YouTube and just get a mention or sponsor them or do something or run a competition and get huge amounts of, get the same amount of engagement. So I think, that's it. You're not going to be on Tim Ferriss's podcast tomorrow, but there's tiers below that, probably have as devoted audience, but just a smaller volume of them. And they all, every podcast that's out there, every interview like this, it all is just engaged. It's just more stuff in the internet that ties you to the brand or the thing you're trying to do. So yeah, I something that I've been trying to focus on a little bit myself is doing it. I try and get a lot of people on and try and give people a platform, but trying to get on and maybe promoting a little bit more about what I do. But so the next question I had, Will, while we're waiting for some others, is mistakes. What are some of the mistakes you see businesses make with their outreach efforts?
So I think the number one mistake, if I think about it, is just rushing the process. Like, obviously, this is like number one mistake is just spamming people, right? Not having a good message, spamming people, going to market, not thinking about this kind of stuff. That's probably the number one mistake. But I'm going to assume that most of the people listening to this or watching this would actually be beyond that stage, and they've got a good offer. They understand their audience. They want to provide value. So the second mistake, besides that major one, I would say is rushing things a little bit too quickly. So for example, aiming to close a sale via email, aiming to close a sale on the very first call. As I've seen with, certainly crushed in the clients that we work with, sometimes if you actually slow down the sales process, your conversion numbers go up by quite a bit. So for example, the only goal I've got when I send an email out is to get a response, either positive or negative. And sometimes, I want a response to a 15-minute phone call. Sometimes I just want a yes on an email so I can send you a case study. And that's enough. And it's literally one little step behind another, and before you know it, you're at the point where you're actually sending some kind of proposal out. So it's all about having, understanding how your customers want to buy. For example, we do a lot of corporates, enterprise clients, and there's no way in heck that someone's going to come through and buy from me in a 2-week period. It just doesn't happen. I've got to get the conversation going. I've got to give them case studies, get their feedback. I've got to talk to them about their needs, scope things out with them, talk to different stakeholders. And it could be a 3 to 6 month sales process, but is it worth it? For me, it is. And that's why we've engineered our sales process to actually slow things down and engage all stakeholders. Depending on your service or product, it might not be for you. You might want to, go through and close the sale sooner than that, but just don't rush it more than you have to.
It's so amazing. Like, people think that the way you act on the internet should be different to the way you act in real life. You wouldn't walk into a BNI event or a networking event going, "Hi, I'm Jimmy. Would you like SEO?" It's like, in what world is that acceptable? You go, oh, "I'm Jimmy. I do this," and then you build a relationship. The internet's no different. It's just a different medium to do that. You don't, it's the same process. Now, it's just something I've always noticed. It's like, oh yeah, people act so differently online to that. And so Wendy's asked us a question. Thanks for tuning in, Wendy. Wendy popped in last week to say hello, and she has an e-commerce store that she's starting up, just for some context. So hello, I have a question. How do I land deals with companies using cold email? I assume, Wendy, just clarify, are you talking about suppliers for your store and building supplier relationships? Because that's something that I'm going to have to tackle. We're going to have to tackle ourselves after buying this e-commerce store we just bought. So how would you approach, let's say I'm starting an e-commerce business. I need to find suppliers, some unique suppliers. Some are notorious hard to get a touch of, find decent. So how would you get involved? How would you reach out to potential suppliers and things like that? And Wendy is an introvert as well, just to qualify.
Awesome. Introverts unite. So suppliers are a bit of a different breed. Suppliers are a bit of a different breed to people that you're partnering and selling to, because the dynamic's a little bit different. Like, you've got to think about the actual dynamic. Some suppliers, I think you've got to qualify like who it is. Same thing like we're targeting for outbound sales. Who are these suppliers are going for? What are they interested in? What do they need before they talk to us? Some of them only deal with huge quantities of orders. So if you know that these are they only deal with orders of $100,000 or less or more, and we don't have that budget, maybe it's not worth approaching them just yet. Maybe it is going to small suppliers who are more hungry for orders and building up to that stage. So it's looking at it from looking at them from a person, going, what do they need, and do we qualify to have the conversation? So that's probably the first thing I'd look at doing. I'd also look at proving yourself to suppliers. I know that good suppliers are hard to come by. I'd look at proving yourself in terms of why you're wanting to talk to them. You might say something like, we sell a whole bunch of these products. We've been getting asked by our customers if we stock something that you do. We don't have a good supplier for this at the moment. We're looking for a partner and a supplier. Is it worth having a conversation? I know I can get sales from this because my customers are asking us for this. I just need to get someone to help us with the supply side. So already that implies that you're not just tire kicking, you're not there to waste your time. You've got orders ready to go, and you just need someone to help them fill those orders. So that might be a good way of getting them on board and saying, okay, it's not a tire kicker. They're serious. They've been around for a little while. Let's have a conversation with them. But it really does come back to, do you qualify to have this conversation with them, and are you chasing the right people to have calls with?
And what are some of the tools that you use to get the details of some of these people? Like, let's say, for instance, I know the company that I want to talk to, but I don't know who to talk to in the company or anything like that. So what are some of the tools that people can use to find these details?
Yeah, so the most useful tool that we use by far, like, we build a whole process around this. So I'll stay at a very high level. We've built processes, we've written software ourselves. I've got team members on processes around this. So I won't go into the nitty gritty of it, but there is a system called Never Bounce, which actually scans email addresses and tells you if it's valid or not. That is an absolutely essential tool. We've got another tool that we either built or paid someone to build for us that takes the name of the person you're trying to reach out to and the email domain, comes up with a bunch of combinations for you. You plug that list into Never Bounce, and Never Bounce says, hey, this email's valid, everything else isn't valid. So then oh, this is the correct email. Now I've got the email address. That, in a nutshell, when you're just getting started, that might be the best thing to do. But there is a whole process behind it as well. There's other tools that you can use, but they get pretty expensive pretty quickly. So we use tools like Clearbit, which gives you data about the people you're targeting. That starts getting expensive really quickly. In Australia, there's an amazing tool actually that we absolutely love called Trigger, Triggr. It's founded by, in full disclosure, founded by a really good friend of mine, Tom. Tom has done an amazing job looking at Australian databases and things like that. So Trigger is amazing for Australia. I don't think they do the US at the moment, unfortunately, but it's an amazing tool that does all of it for you. So that's definitely worth checking out. There's tools out there. A lot of them are actually rubbish. A lot of them are junk. We really just rely on somebody in my team sitting there and going through it manually. But,
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch on, you skimmed over it, but we covered this off. Why is it important to not just spray and pray with email addresses and worry? Why would you concern yourself with emails bouncing? And I suppose it's worth clarifying what is actually bouncing and why is it important not to do it?
Yeah, so the main issue is if you're sending emails from your primary domain. So for example, if I'm sending emails from growthlabz.com, that's where my website is hosted. That's where what my accounting software is plugged into. So if you do the wrong thing and you get too many bounces, too many people marking you as spam, email servers start marking your entire domain as a spam domain, which means that when you start sending out actual things that you want to send out, like replies to clients, like invoices, important
Invoices.
stuff for your business, invoices especially, you don't want that going to spam and clients not paying you because you've ruined your email reputation across all of these servers. So that's why it's very, very important to only send emails written in the right way to legitimate email addresses, which have passed through a service like Never Bounce.
Yeah. Because that you can live or die by that. You gotta
Always get
bills
paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Always
So
get paid, yeah.
Jason has left a big comment here. So Jason, thanks for tuning in, mate. If you're a B2C company wanting to scale up, do you generally recommend starting advertising direct to customer or doing outreach to other businesses to be affiliates or partners? I would imagine both make sense ultimately, but what would make sense to focus? What would make most sense to focus on first?
Yeah.
So he has a security company.
Good question.
He's wondering whether he goes to the customer, like really pushes to go to the customer first, or build those relationships with partners and affiliates in the space using outreach.
Good question. So I'm going to give you two answers. One is if you've got your processes sorted out and automated enough, there's no reason why you can't be doing both. Especially if it's a new business, your main focus should be really customer acquisition, right? Getting more revenue. That'll be the main focus. So both would be the ideal answer, which you've obviously know that, Jason. Which one I would do first? It really depends. It really depends on if there are really good partners in the space or not that I can leverage. If there are, I might spend the same amount of effort marketing or trying to sell to one retailer that gets me in front of 500 or 1,000 end users versus trying to figure out this ads thing, right? Because we do a lot of ads too. Like, don't get me wrong, we do LinkedIn ads and Facebook ads for our clients, but ads always take time to get right. Like, people talk about, hey, you can throw up some ads, you can start making money in like a week's time. It just doesn't happen like that. Like, it takes time. You've got to test the copy, test the creative, test your funnel, there's so many different things you've got to get right before an ad can really work. One of my biggest clients and most successful and fastest growing clients, they spent $100,000 on advertising before they started seeing profit. And that was on testing and learning, and they had to go through that. So it's like, can you afford to pay for ads for 3 months and not get results from it? That's the question. I generally always prefer doing the outreach first, even for B2C, if I can find really good partners first, because the partners, they're looking for products to sell most of the time, right? If you've got a really good product, they want to make money too. If it's not a good product, they might even come back and tell you why they won't promote this to their list. They might say, hey, thanks for reaching out. I looked at your product. It's not the right fit for us because, and that will give you really good context into what you need to change with your product. So, rather than going through and spending a bunch of ads on stuff that you haven't even tested yet, well, now you've got some really good feedback in terms of, all right, maybe I need to change this to get the right results. So I'm always an advocate of how can I sell as much as possible with as little spend as possible in the very beginning until I know that, I've proven that my marketing works. So I would ideally do both at the same time. If I wanted to focus on one first, I'm a bit biased. I would always go outreach first. I'll look at affiliates, other business partners, and get them to sell my stuff first, because more revenue is going to come from this, even if I have to give a clip away.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? So most people want to take 100% of the pie all the time, when actually, again, the little YouTube channels, you clip the top of the ticket off and give that to someone else and let them, leverage their networks and things. It's it's amazing what can come from that. And like you said, once you get that sort of funnel and channel sorted, then you can start to look at going, well, actually, I don't need to lean on the Facebook ads to generate revenue because I've got this little stream coming in, but I can use it to accelerate and just amplify what I'm doing already. So Wendy's got here. So just following up our conversation, reaching out to journalists and magazines. Also, that's an interesting one. How would you from a public relations like outreach perspective, how would you get like a journalist or a piece in magazines? I know your mate sitting around the corner, Adam, seems to do a pretty good job of that. So you know, maybe need to get him on asking. But like, what are some ways you can reach out to those to like public more public relations style outreach as opposed to you know, trying to sell something?
Yeah, it's a very similar play to podcasters because, you know, journalists and magazines are always looking for content. They're always, you know, saying who do we know, who can we pull in that's going to give us really good content behind this. I would use a similar approach. I would reference an article they've written in the past. So, for example, with journalists, you know, generally have pretty big egos. Stroke their egos. Hey, read your article about this topic. Loved it. Is wondering, you know, here's what I do. Here's what I think you might be interested in. Can we do something together? Can I help you with an article about this topic? So if you can minimize the work for them, if you can reduce, you know, if you can stroke their ego, if you can reduce the work they've got to do to get good quality articles that they can get recognition from their bosses from, that's going to be really helpful for them. So treat them very similar to podcasters, you know, to influencers, stroke the ego a little bit, give them some kind of value offer and give them more content. And I'm sure they'll respond and would love to have you on.
I'm going to give a little hot tip here from an SEO standpoint on what can work for getting good engagement from journalists and things like that. This is quite a new novel concept, but it works really well, is statistics articles. You know, journalists are looking for prime sources of information so let's say they want to create an article about recycling. They need to have the numbers to back that article up. So creating an article about like some of all the numbers you need to know about recycling and talk about, you know, the percentage rates of recycling. You're just pulling stuff from the Bureau of Statistics, but you're consolidating into one article. Then you might get cited as a source, and then next thing you become the authority. So like, let's say, Wendy, you're selling, you know, say you're selling pens or something. You can be like, you know, these are some of the trends, you know, these are some of the pen trends of 2021 that are, you know, there's been a 20% uptake in this style of pen. Next thing, some lifestyle magazine's going to get you on to talk about pens because you become the authority in the space. So that can definitely help as well. And then you use the outreach to leverage that. It's go, look, I don't know if this could be useful to you, but I just wrote this article about, you know, some key, I see you write a lot about pens and lifestyle. You know, I don't know if this is of value to you, but I went and did a lot of research and found some key numbers. And like, that could be that little bit of value you can give to them to get them to engage with you. So that's my little bit of advice from an SEO standpoint. But now, I know you're a busy guy, so I won't take up too much more of your time, Will. But like, what are some of the trends in the direct outreach space that you see coming over the horizon that businesses should really be sort of keeping an eye on? Yeah, what are some of those? What are some of those trends?
I'll make this quick because I think I've got a phone call waiting for me. But I think one of the trends I'm seeing is personalization more than anything else. It's lessening the quantity that we send out, but increasing the quality. If quality, you know, if you can get quality outreach going out, your strike rate is going to be so much higher than just sending out junk. So I will spend more time on every single lead that you try to approach. I would spend more time A/B split testing your message. I would work on the stuff that you can control and, you know, and really focus on improving the quality, not really worrying about the numbers as much. And I think if you take that kind of approach, you're going to get better results for less effort ultimately. Yeah,
100%. Now, Will, I'm going to let you go because, like, obviously you've got your you're a ninja when it comes to time management. So I know you got something on. Dude, thanks so much for coming on. You can tell towards the end, everyone's starting to get a little bit more out of this. So, Will, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. Guys, any questions, you know, any follow-up questions that anyone may have, how can they get in contact with you, Will?
Yep. So hit me up, info@growthlabz.com. That's probably the best way. And hey, if there's enough questions, I'm always happy to jump back on for a second episode as well.
Dude, yeah, of course. That's awesome to hear, guys. Thank you so much, Will. That's all I can say. You know, I got a lot of it, out of this as well. Yeah, jump off, Will. Go do what you need to do.
Thanks, mate. Awesome. We'll catch you soon. Thank you.
We'll see everyone next week. Cheers, guys.